Today was intended to be the 100th episode of Corrections. To celebrate, Seth was going to shop the entire catalog to prospective buyers in hopes that as the sole writer, his publishing rights would be worth a small fortune. Sadly, he discovered that he no longer owned the original recordings or masters. The reason Seth lost control is in dispute. He claims he asked Shoemaker to ensure he owned his work, to which Shoemaker replied, "On it." Shoemaker claims he'd never heard the request, and when he yelled "on it," it was to tell Seth he was on the phone. He added that he almost never hears Seth as he tries his best to tune out his yapping. Having no legal recourse, Seth determined his only way forward was to re-record Corrections from the beginning in what would be known to all as Corrections, Seth's version.
Few corrections. Want to do a few corrections from yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about the children's book character, Babar. Babar the elephant. I said Babar. I was told that was wrong. It's Babar. I was saying it like David Spade's flight attendant character. Babar. We were talking because of the context of Dr. Seuss and how Babar is just getting away with the fact that he married his cousin Celeste. But that's helpful because he answers to Babar, King of the Elephants, and Giuliani of the Jungle. But not Babar. I also said we referred to cliffhanger in German as Klippenbügel. I was told by some German viewers the German word for cliffhanger is cliffhanger. So I guess German is a little bit easier to learn than I thought. And that Klippenberg, obviously we're upset we got it wrong, and we're going to take it up with our on-staff German fact checker, Klaus Google Translate. I was told the way we said it was basically like a coat hanger on a cliff, and as a means of apology, here's what that would look like. Here you go. Surreptitiously, I said that. Missed both T's, pretty embarrassing. Came in today, I said to Shoemaker. Did you notice that? Surreptitiously? I said it wrong. He said, no, because I thought you were saying a different word. And I said, yeah, but in context, didn't you know? And he goes, I actually think you also used it wrong, so that's real double barrel. Also, you might have thought once I said surreptitiously, I internally thought, that's wrong. Absolutely 100% not the case. Said it and thought, nailed it. Walked home, proud of myself. But again, and also I want to point out that, when I make mistakes and you guys call them out, and then I take the time on the show to correct them, that doesn't mean you should keep pointing them out. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But we're just trying to do our best here. All right, is that good? Great. So just put that in the vault and don't let him near it. So we're done for today. Sorry it was so short. I know a lot of you look forward to this, and I'm sorry somebody ruined it. For all of us. See, I mean, I do want to make a few corrections. But don't for 1 second think this is an episode of Corrections. I referred to an Irish town as Dundalk. It's Dundalk. Dundalk. Apologies. A Dund up. A quick rundown of some notes I've gotten on impressions. Somebody said my Nick Cage sounds like Andy Samberg doing Nick Cage. That's because it is. I said I had a passable Cliff Clavin impression. I was told by a jackal that it was not, in fact, passable. Well, yeah, agree to disagree there. Somebody said I did a good Steve from Sex and the City. They then added they'd never seen Sex and the City, but that actor was in Chicago Fire. And they could tell it was a good impression because how he sounded in that. He was in Chicago Fire. He had that famous catchphrase, not another fire. Portia is 2 syllables. An easy way to remember is Ellen DeGeneres' wife, Portia de Ross. I said, I made a joke, like it would be like saying Ferrari car. A bunch of you said you could say Ferrari car because Ferrari also makes tractors. I don't think you have to say Ferrari car. I do think if you're going to pick up a date and a Ferrari tractor, you should say Ferrari tractor. Don't want to show up. Ko-chung, ko-chung, ko-chung. I can see it by your face, so you expected something else. Totally, by the way, totally fine to say Boeing plane. They also make helicopters, drones, satellites. I also assume they make those Lord of the Rings movies. Because they're so Boeing. Can we edit out Lederman saying Jesus? Dub in this. Ha! Good one! Speaking of dad jokes, we did a surprise inspection. Brian Donaldson wrote a few dad jokes. I referred to that when he showed his picture, and someone said, "At least he looks like a dad. You have 3 kids, and you still look like a childless dog owner from LA." No one in Australia, this is from our Australian viewers, no one in Australia drinks Foster's. No one in Australia says crikey. Dingoes are not native to Australia. They were introduced. And when they were introduced, the Australians said, welcome, lovely to have you. And the dingoes said, we'd love to meet the baby. We had sort of a corrections within the body of A Closer Look about this photo. You guys might remember this photo. Called out a lot of mistakes of it. And then a bunch of you guys did some more digging. They said that they were not in a reflection. The reflection wouldn't be see-through like that. Also, you did some looks at the posters, and you were like, based on the fact that there's a Broadway poster for An American in Paris and a Captain America movie, this is definitely from 2016. But again, how could we get a picture of Times Square from today? Somebody said the tag at the end, we have a new tag at the end of A Closer Look, you know, those sort of like and subscribe page. And we did switch to a new picture after the 10th anniversary. And a lot of people said the photo of me looks photoshopped. And I mean... Talked about taking the subway, and a bunch of you said, I don't believe that you take the subway. I do take the subway when I'm with my children. I just think it's important not to get their snot all over the limo. We did not get to the bottom as to whether or not Wally gets paid for having a conversation with me that is not scripted. We had an unscripted conversation, and one of you posited, maybe Wally's doing that, making mistakes on purpose so he can cash in. We did not get to the bottom of it because Wally was out this week. He said he needed a few days off to spend all his money. It's Emmy time, and that means we have to pick an episode of Corrections to submit to the good people at the Emmys. This window, we crowdsourced this last time, and I want to note that it was the first time we didn't get nominated. But it starts, I guess episode 80 is the first in the window, so episode 80 to basically now, I wouldn't pick this one because this is not an episode of Corrections, but either in the comments of Corrections, because I'm read it anyway, or you could go to Sea Captain Polls. We'll post, what's your favorite, and let us know. Someone asked if we mic the crew for laughs during Corrections. We do not mic the crew, but over half the crew are mics. Nestle is not based in Zurich. It's based near Geneva. Also, this is fascinating to me. The CEO of Nestle is named Nestle Nielsen. And you might be saying, surely that can't be true. It is true. And don't call me Shirley. I implied that New York Times crossword editor Will Shortz would crap his shorts when the Lego people came for him, and I was told by a jackal, when the Lego people come for you, you don't crap your pants, you a brick. Also, Will Shortz, I read, after we mentioned him, he's recovering from an illness, and get well soon to the great Will Shortz. Mentioned a surprise inspection earlier. We did a surprise inspection. We had some corrections for Scollins, who wrote a great many of the jokes. He had one joke about how people are sleeping worse, and his punchline is, well, he's been in jail, and showed a picture of Bill Cosby. A bunch of you said Bill Cosby has been out of jail for a couple of years, and I can't believe he escaped. Not want to have been on duty when that happened. Scollins writes jokes on purpose to chill the audience, and some of you thought it was a little hard on him. One of you went so far as to say, "Leave him alone." If you know, you know. And then a bunch of you said, hey, because I said, I cut some. I cut some because, and again, the ones I kept chilled. And I cut some, and a bunch of you were like, tell us the ones you cut. Okay. A new Apple TV Plus documentary is set to reveal John Lennon's final words. I'm guessing, ouch? Today was National Milk Day, the one day on broadcast TV we're allowed to show whole. Butthole. ABC last week premiered its new reality dating show, The Golden Bachelor, starring a 72-year-old widower. So you can probably guess where he got the roses. And these are his friends. And yeah, so I'm not gonna do the ones where the punchlines were about Betty White, Harriet Tubman, and Judy Blume. We record a new tag for Culture Lux. The news, right? Can make you crazy. But what if there was something you could watch that only made me crazy? Well, there is. It's called Corrections, and it's every week where I respond to YouTube commenters and what they've said I got wrong about each week's show. Check it out wherever you get your YouTube videos. So YouTube, where you are right now. I can be here all day. All right. That about wraps it up. I do hope we can eventually get to 100, because it'll be a really special thing for me. See you next week.